And I think it's recording. So, yes, I'm recording. Good. So what I'm going to do is share my screen with you. Best laid plans here. It's all set up, and now I can't find where I've put the screen I was going to look at. One moment. Yeah. There we go. Can you see that screen okay? Can just Jennifer, maybe if you could just say
yeah,
clear. Lovely. Super.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
That's going to be the kind of that's the phrase that's going to come out of this whole experience, isn't it? Can you hear me or can you see it? Okay, so this is my Aula space for one of the modules I ran in semester 1 called Assessment in Education. And I thought that rather than generate a different presentation, I just talk about the process of setting up the Aula site and in theory today what I've learned from doing Aula in semester 1 and how I might change my approach to Aula in semester 2. So this is my home page. When you go into Aula, if you've got more than one Aula site, you'll get this drop down option here. I've just frozen for a moment. Sorry. Let me just read. I've frozen. Sorry, folks. Let me stop sharing. No, that's frozen as well. Okay. I expect you're seeing me either frozen or talking to myself in a mad way. Something happened to my screen. Sorry. Sorry, folks, this is not a very good start, is it? Right. I'm back again. Sorry, folks, can you see, am I moving again now?
Yeah, you are, yeah.
Thank you. Sorry, I don't know what happened there. Okay, so this is my module. If you've got multiple modules, you'll get this kind of drop-down choice here. So I had 2 modules in semester 1. One was called Introduction to Technology in Education. The other one is called Assessment in Education. That's the one I'm going to share with you today. And in semester 2, I have a module called Interpersonal Interactions, which I'm going to run on Aula. And you'll also get access to the Aula training space, which, to be honest, I haven't used, and a test space there. So multiple spaces. This is community. So when you get into Aula, you've got 2 spaces within each module Aula site. You've got this thing called community, which is essentially a messaging feed. It's a little bit like posting on Moodle. That's at least how I've used it. And it's a mixture of, so I can post here with messages to students. And what I've done is followed Aula guidance and aimed that they're very into the idea of you sending a message in advance of each live session saying, hello, looking forward to seeing you next week. Here's some information about next week. So I followed their model. I think that's quite a good model. Let's just find some examples here. So there we go. So this is when we were still doing a few live sessions. So kind of reminders to students, as I would use Moodle announcements, updates, videos introducing the next week's content. Now, I changed my practice a little bit with in terms of doing videos, and I'll talk about this a little bit later on. But when I started Aula, I used YouTube. So I made my video introductions on using Teams. So I went into Teams, I arranged an appointment with myself, and I videoed myself, and then I downloaded the video and uploaded to YouTube, and then uploaded to Aula. And that's quite nice, I think, because let me see if here we go. So this is an example of a recording of a session actually that's on YouTube. And the advantage of YouTube currently on Aula is it kind of slots in rather nicely into your Aula site as a sort of live space. This particular module, I have a hearing impaired student on the module, so I've got two. So there's me, and I've got two signers on the session. So I was using YouTube initially, and then I switched into using Panopto. So you can see here, that's a Panopto link. So what I tended to do was put a hyperlink into a statement rather than upload, you know, those very long, quirky URLs for Panopto. I just added the information as a hyperlink with an instruction there. I've used that throughout. It's very easy to do. Let me show you how that works. So if I was going to put a new message on, let me go up to the top of my messaging space. So if I want to share something new, I just type away, hello, you know, this week, etc. And then post it. It's really straightforward. It's very, very simple. It's very user-friendly. If you want to add something else, you get these options with these little kind of pluses here. Let me just go down a bit here. So if I press on the plus, it gives me some options there. So I can upload files from my computer. I can add a voice recording. That's a link to assignments. I'll look at that a bit later on. That's code if you're inserting code from YouTube, for example. But actually, if you're inserting a link from YouTube, you just basically copy and paste, sorry, copy the YouTube URL from the video that you've made or the thing that you want to upload, paste it in there, and it appears immediately as a nice little kind of thumbnail. It works really well. And I'd recommend that as a way of organizing videos on this. Let me get rid of that so I don't post that to students. And the other thing about community is that students can ask you questions as well. And I think this works better than, you know, Moodle to me has never really had this facility. So students can ask me a question and I can respond. So there's the student's question, there's my response. So it's kind of, and you get little flags. You'll get flags on your system saying that there's a question there to respond to. And those again are the link, the Panopto links rather than the YouTube links. This is quite a nice thing to use. This was recommended to me by my technician, my Aula technician, to use emojis at the beginning of my posts, and I kind of got into that. It became a bit of a habit. It's very easy. You just kind of open up you just search emoji on Google, and there's just loads of stuff. And sometimes you've got to be a little bit inventive. But you know, there's a video emoji and there's a books emoji, etc., etc. So I tended to use quite a lot of that kind of stuff with my messaging to students. So community is a feed that's involved with you messaging students and students contacting you. So that's that bit there. You get this thing up the side here. Let's see if I can get rid of that. This is a kind of who's contacted you most recently. And I think I can get rid of that by clicking, I think, let's get that out of the way. I can't move the thing. Oh, I'll leave it there. I can't move it at the moment. Okay, so then I'm going to go into, oh, I've frozen again. That was a mistake, wasn't it?
Andrew, I don't know if you're able to see the comments, but a couple of people have said, can you show us how to link a Panopto video rather than YouTube?
Yes.
So 2 people have asked that.
I'll do that now. Let me see if I can work out how to do that. I think I might have. I'm just going to stop sharing my screen for a moment because I think it's. Yeah, I'd frozen on my screen. I'll show you how to do a Panopto video. Okay, let me have a go at that. So I think. All right, back again. I think what happens is when when you're doing a Teams talk and you get, so Jennifer, I've got a little kind of logo in the corner of my screen with your icon on there. When I try to move that seems to be when my screen freezes. Really frustrating. Right, let me see if I can find a Panopto link. So now, can you see what I'm doing now? Going into Panopto?
Yeah, we can see that.
Cool. Now, if I can remember how to get into Panopto now, sign in. What's it? It's that one, isn't it? So ADFS, that's our new thing, isn't it, for Panopto? So these are my Panopto videos. So let's go and find something here. If I go into something like general academic, so how to organize a reference list. So there's my Panopto video. So if I go to share, currently it's open to anybody. Okay, so what I need, I don't want to embed at this point. What I want is that, I want that link. Okay, so control copy. I'm going to go back into my feed and then I'm going to write a comment here. So have a look at my video. Okay. So there's my text. So I'm going to, now I hope this is going to work now, having built it up like this. There you go. So I'm highlighting the word video. Okay. I'm going to click on that one. That's the kind of the paperclip icon. I'm going to paste in the URL and then I'm going to click on return. So that's now made that's become live now as a hyperlink. Does that make sense? So now if I click on that, in theory, if I open up there, it takes me into that video. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Yeah.
So it's very sort of, it's very neat, I think. What I have found though, let me just show you what it looks like if you're into YouTube. So if you happen to have used YouTube, let me just find a YouTube video here. So here's one of my YouTube videos. Right, let me just copy that link there, control copy. Let me get rid of that one. Let me go back into my Aula site. So alternatively, if I say have a look at my video, and then if I go, so when I paste in from YouTube, it comes out immediately as a, as a little thumbnail, and you're straight in. So I kind of like that, and that doesn't work with Panopto. So what I do is, if you're using Panopto anywhere, create a hyperlink using that highlight paperclip and then enter the URL. If you're using YouTube, if you happen to be using YouTube, then you can just simply paste the URL in and it comes up as a thumbnail like that.
And Ricardo's asked, can you get a Panopto thumbnail like you described for YouTube?
No, well, I don't think you can. I have asked Aula about this, and I think they're looking at sort of making the link to from Panopto to Aula different, which would enable us to use the thumbnails, but no is the answer. I've not found a way of doing that. I think the only way to do it, which would be a bit clunky, would be a bit of a fake one, really. What you could do is add an image of. I mean, you'd have to go through a bit of a process. You'd have to get an image of the thumbnail,
yeah,
as a picture, add the picture, and then add the hyperlink to that. But there's not a simple way of doing that in the same way that you can do with YouTube.
because Nadia is suggesting, what if you use the embed option in Panopto?
No, well, the last time I tried that, it didn't work. I haven't tried it recently, but it's not something that worked for me when I was using it the first time around. I'll look into it, but I've not seen that. So YouTube is very straightforward. Panopto is fine, but I don't. The embed thing didn't work for me. I like the idea of slot the embed in and it becomes. But I haven't looked at that recently. It didn't work last
What
season.
we could do is maybe explore with Aula the likelihood of them being able to make that happen. I've actually got a project team meeting with them after this, and I could raise it with them then.
Yeah.
I mean, it might be that it just simply can't be done, but if it's something that actually will make the system more efficient and easy to use, then let's try and explore that.
Yeah, that would be great, Jennifer. That would be super. It would make life easier, definitely.
And Michael said, Andrew, please can you say something about the student experience of Aula versus Moodle?
Yeah, Michael, I mean, I would say, the feedback from students. So this one of the modules I did last semester, the technology module, which is it's not an option, they have to do it. And I would say that the students on the education course aren't terribly technology savvy. It's not a highly technical module. It's about the kind of theory of using technology in education. And I used Aula with that group of level 5 students, and the possibility for the semester 2 module came up, and one that I've got in semester 2 is also a level 5 module, and I put it to these students that I was going to be using Aula for the second semester, and those students who responded, probably 15% of the students, they were all very positive. I think Aula, they prefer Aula to Moodle. I'd suggest that the interfaces are much closer in Aula to the sorts of interfaces that students are used to using on a kind of daily basis. So are similar to things like, look, I'm a bit old here, so things like Facebook and WhatsApp and that kind of stuff. It's akin to that. So I think they quite like the familiarity of it, and they were very positive. The only negative thing that came back from students last semester was that it was the juggle between using Aula and Moodle. They felt, so it wasn't a problem with either individual platform, it was that they had to get their head around using 2 different platforms. And that was the thing that came back as a slight negative. So Aula generally was very positive. They liked it, but there was a concern about using 2 different platforms simultaneously.
Andrew, many thanks for that. That's really reassuring. Thank you.
That's a pleasure, Michael.
James is asking, linked to the above, can you give any tips on how to get students going with it? Did you just try and do that live in the first session, or anything, and beforehand to get them familiarised?
We kind of, at the first time, so last semester, I think that's a good point, James. I mean, I kind of went, it was new to me, and I kind of, I kept the first session simple, and it was more like, it was a kind of conversation as much as I would have a conversation. So it's a bit like this, if you like. It was this kind of exchange. And what I did was opened a Teams space and opened up the Aula space, and we just kind of talked about it, and I kind of showed them what all the tricks were, and we worked through it that kind of way. It took a bit of time to get them. You can see that conversation, those comments from students, that didn't happen for 2 or 3 weeks, and I was getting nothing. And there's lots of little sort of social media buttons there, so there are sort of smileys and likes and all that kind of stuff, and nobody touched them, you know, for about 3 or 4 weeks, and then suddenly it started to happen. I wouldn't say, you know, if you're a kind of Facebook user and likes, it was never on that kind of, you know, that kind of major level. It was pretty quiet, but I did get, you know, 4 or 5 students responding to comments, and I suppose that reflects my student group a little bit. They're quite they're not very forward with sort of those kind of comms. It's very difficult to get them to do evaluations, for example. So you know, I wasn't surprised that it was kind of low engagement with that, but it did build up. So I would recommend the way to do it would be to have your first live session as a conversation around Aula, walk them through, and I ended up doing that for several weeks, to be honest. So we would go, so I'd give them pre-activities, which again is an Aula thing. It's kind of flipped classroom model is what they're going for. So as we're all kind of looking at now, so preparatory stuff for the seminar workshop, and I'd give them some activities to do. Now, to be honest, they didn't really do them to start with. So what I did in the live session was we went through the live activity ended up being, let's go through the preparatory activities together, and then you kind of got some dialogue going. So so they were using Aula as the platform, but I was using Teams very much as the space in which the real dialogue happened. Although our colleagues in Aula will encourage you to try and get that dialogue going within Aula, and I think that just is a bit. Perhaps I wasn't brave enough last semester. I slightly chickened out, to be honest. I kind of sort of went, okay, I've got to get this going. So we ended up doing it in Teams, rather than I put maybe more onus on students to actually do the engagement with Aula beforehand. And certainly the Aula technicians will probably say to you, you know, use Aula for this kind of engagement and brave it through. And that's certainly what my technical helper said this year. You know, it might not happen in the first week or the second week, but give them, you know, give them responsibility to have that kind of discussion before the live session, and it will happen, I'm told.
Thanks, Andrew. I'll give it a go.
All right, good luck.
Andrew, somebody's asking, can we do MCQ exam in Aula, or do we have to use Moodle and paste a link for that in Aula?
Now, MCQs. I have used, we're talking about multiple choice there, aren't we, with acronyms, multiple choice questions. So I have used multiple choice questions in Aula. So I don't do that as part of our assessment. We don't have any fundamental assessment through exams, but I have used multiple choice quizzes with students, but I've used Google Docs for those. So I've set them up in Google Docs, and they've worked pretty well. I'm a bit of a novice with Google Docs, but once I got my head around it, it worked well. Or Google Forms, Google Docs, Google Forms. Maybe it's called Google Forms to set up multiple choice quizzes, and we use them. Let me show you what that looks like. Okay, let me go back to this module again to give it some context. So this is this assessment and education module again. So that we've been looking at the community space. So the journey. So the community space is the feed, the messaging feed. The journey is the module content. And if you're doing Aula, you'll have seen this stuff already. I think I think it's active. So there you go. So there's my There are all my weeks, week 1, week 2, etc. Now let me think about where there's a task for them to do. Week 6. So what I did with this module last semester was that we thought that because we were going online, student engagement was going to be trickier. So we came up with a brainwave of having engagement tasks. These were tasks that carried a percentage of the overall summative grade, but all students had to do was do them. They didn't have to do them well, they just had to do them. So they carried, you know, like 10% of the overall mark. So there we go. So this is one of the engagement tasks. And what I did is I put in, I got them to read something, then answer some questions about something. So it's this thing here. Now, I'm not sure what happens if I click on this. Can you see my quiz there?
Yeah.
So there you go. So it's just a multiple choice thing, but set up on a Google form. And they just choose an answer. And then they submit at the end. But I couldn't, so that's the way I did it. It seemed to be reasonably successful. And I used the hyperlink trick there. So I put the title there and then made the link. Then I did, you know, the paperclip thing and put the hyperlink into the Google form.
And kind of linked to this, Andrew, somebody's saying, can you show us how to create an assignment with Turnitin activated?
I'll have a go. Okay. Yeah, that's a really interesting question, because initially we weren't able to use Turnitin. I think they introduced this during the year. So how do you do it? Let me show you my assignments to start with. So if I go into assignments, you can see these are both Turnitin assignments. So that's the engagement tasks, and that's the kind of main block of the assignment. So they've got these Turnitin icons there. Let me just show you this. I can edit these. So there's a little edit key there. And you can see there, so I can hide the assignment, I can edit it, and I can delete it. If I go into edit, it's actually really simple. I quite like this. Once I got used to it, it was great. So you can change the kind of submission dates and things like that. Obviously, I've changed my submission date substantially. So that's easy. Now, how do you do a new one? You go into new assignment. Okay, and then you select a tool. So you've got a drop-down menu there of either Turnitin or Hand-in. So Hand-in is Aula's in-house mechanism, I think. So you use Turnitin, is what we're using. So Turnitin, next, and then off you go. Title, description, open date, close date, release, etc., etc. Is that enough information? It's really simple. It's easier than on Moodle, I would say, to add a Turnitin thing, but you've got to do that. You've got to make that choice right at the very beginning about whether you're going to go for Turnitin or Hand-in, and you'll go for Turnitin. And then once you go.
Oh, so I was just going to say, Andy Younger's got a question as well.
Go on, Andy.
It was just about, do you end up, if you create a video of a lecture, do you end up posting it twice, once in community or once in Journey? And is there a search function? So that if the lecture, you know, if the lecture 3 is now somewhere in 10 weeks worth of posts on community, can I search for it?
I don't. Well, let's the second question first, Andy. I don't think I've never seen a search option. I think that would be brilliant. but I've never seen a search option. So it would, you kind of have to know where the thing is that you're looking for. So you have to kind of know which week it's in, I guess.
So maybe you, in a way, I think my practice would be to post the video in the lecture slot, in the journey, so they can always find it again afterwards. And if necessary, pop a little message to say, hey, it's there now. But in a way, if they expect it to come within a couple of days, it's about how you find stuff. That's something that I'm still exploring and imagining. It's how you organize stuff on Aula.
I've done it. I've tended to do it in both ways, in both styles, Andy. So what I did, let me show you. So week 6. So let me do that first. So here's my live session in week 6. So I've kind of posted an agenda for the live session. Oh, there's my agenda. I'm not quite sure how much of this you can see. So there's my what I'm going to cover. There is, what was that? That's just a kind of a little bit of a kind of mini PowerPoint there. There's my live session. So the recording of the live session, which was on YouTube there. So it's kind of obvious. I mean, I think actually, good point, Andy. I mean, what I might change, this has made me think about this, is that rather than just say week 6, what I might say is week 6 or 6, and then kind of what the core content of that week is.
That makes sense to me.
Does that make sense? So I might change this to say, whatever, week 6, whatever, assessment in learning, so that students would know to come to this particular week to find that particular bit of information. I think that would actually improve the orientation. What I've done is, so that video there, I will have also posted in community somewhere, saying, somewhere here it will say, let's see if I can find an example just to show. There you go. So that's week 8, not week 6, but you can see that's the introduction. There we go. So I also posted the live session in community, because it's actually really easy. Once you've got the link, it takes about 10 seconds more for you to do those two jobs. So you post it in your journey session, so into week 7 live, video of live session. And then what you can do is you still got that URL copied. You go straight into community and say, here's the live session. Plug it in there as well. So it's very easy for students to find it in either of those locations.
We've got a couple of questions about rubric. So we're currently using a marking rubric in Moodle. Will this Aula Turnitin integration override the need for a marking rubric? And then somebody says assignments. What about the rubric we need to use? Can we integrate them? Yeah,
you can integrate them. So so I've just used exactly the same type. Hope I did. I think I did. Let's go into Journey. So if I go into Journey, go into Assignment, let's just see what happens here. So if I go into, right, so there's my, so I can open this whole thing in Turnitin. So let's happen here. What does this look like? And note, students have access to Turnitin now via Aula. So although we can't, I don't think we're still unable to access Turnitin via Moodle. It is available in Aula. Now there's my assignment inbox. Now what do I do here to get to the, let's have a look here. I think it might be the settings here. Yeah, there you go. So let me go back and show you what I did then. So I went into my assignment. I opened it in Turnitin. So there's a couple of steps here. Then once I'm into the Turnitin space on Aula, I've got that settings cog there. I open that one up. So now I'm editing in Turnitin, but using Aula as my access point. And then I've got optional settings here. I think this is where it is. So, and then when you go there, you've got rubric manager exactly as you would have on Moodle. Does that answer the question?
Yes, thank you. That's fab.
It's fine. It's good. It's a nice system. I think it's easier to do. It was easier to set up Turnitin via Aula than it is. I think via Moodle it's a little bit clunkier, I'd say.
Ricardo's asking, you have a due date for assignments, but can you get a cut-off date for DDS students?
I don't think you can, Ricardo. I think what I did was I did worry about this and talked to Aula. They were great, actually. I've got to praise the Aula technicians. They are available 24 hours a day and answer you very, very quickly. Now, how did it work? So I was concerned about, because I didn't appear to have the facility to release assignments in the same way that I would have on Moodle. So you know where you go onto Moodle and you mark everything, and then when you've got everything marked, then you click on release grades to students, all that kind of stuff. At least that's how I use Turnitin on Moodle. I didn't have that option within Aula, but what you do is when you set Aula up, you embed the release date when you're setting up. So you've got the submission deadline, and then you've got the release date. And at the moment, I've set the release date as 1st of March, because if we're saying 1st of February, I'm going to have loads of stuff coming in on the 1st of February that I've got to mark simultaneously. So I've given myself a little bit more time there, but I can adjust that 1st of March release date back. So as soon as I'm ready, I can change that 1st of March to whatever, 20th of February, 15th of February, won't be then, 20th of February, and release it, and then it will be automatically released because that's the release date. So the control you have over the release of marks is in your hands, but you have to change the release date, and you can alter the release date whenever you want to. So that's pretty straightforward, but there's no way of that I can see of setting a separate submission deadline for DDS students. But there isn't that, we haven't got that facility on Moodle either, I don't think, unless I've missed it. So yeah, the cutoff date, that's good. There is a cutoff date, there isn't there? Yeah. I don't think, there's just late. So it just comes in at when they submit after the submission date, it's just flagged as late. There's not I don't think there's a cutoff date specifically, but there is a release date. So I think, let me just check. I think all I've got. Let's have a look here. So I'm in here again. Yeah, you see that I've only got those 2 dates there. I've got a due date and I've got a feedback release date, and that's it. Okay. Mm-hmm. The thing, one of the things that I think is slightly confusing, just to flag this, and Jennifer, this might be worthwhile taking to the Aula team. Mm-hmm. One of the things in terms of students submitting to Aula, to Turnitin via Aula, that doesn't happen, that I think unsettles students. 2 things. One of them is that they don't automatically get a submission receipt. So some students are a little bit anxious about, have I submitted? Have I definitely submitted? You can get one, but you've got to kind of go through a process on Aula to get your submission receipt, whereas I think when students submit on through Turnitin via Moodle, you get an automatic receipt. So that's unsettled, particularly the more sort of you know, thorough students who want to kind of definitely know they're getting their receipt. So that's a shift there. The other thing that's different is, what's the other thing that's different? The other thing that's different is about submission opportunities. And again, Jennifer, I think this is something to discuss with Aula. When students submit through Turnitin on Aula, as I understand it, they get 3 submission opportunities only, and all of those submissions are, there's no draft submission. There's nothing flagged as a draft, and then you've got to go through another process and say, yeah, this is the one I want to be marked. There's no difference. So you submit as a student, you can get your report, and then you can resubmit, and that overrides the previous submission, and then you can resubmit again, and that overrides the previous submission, and then that's it. That's end of the game there. And there's no opportunity for students to flag something as a draft or as a full submission. So I had to talk to students about that and make it clear to them that they've only got the 3 submission opportunities. I don't know if that's shifted at all going into semester 2. So if you've got somebody who is using Turnitin in quite an independent way, so to check their submissions and look at similarity and all that kind of stuff, and is kind of going backwards and forwards, they've only got a total of 3 submission opportunities. So they've got, if you like, 2 drafts and a definite one. And there's no difference between, from our point of view, between a draft submission and a submission for marking.
What I'll do is I'll mention this to Aula in our meeting. Somebody's asked, do you know if your students were using the Aula app on their phones?
Yeah, they were. I would say that the majority of them were using it on their phones. And what was really interesting for me was when we had that, when we were rebooting, changing our login information. Just before that, you know, when the library went down, at that point, when the library access went down, my laptop Aula access also went down, and the only way I could access Aula at that point was on my phone, was via the app. I can't explain why, but it's so and that was very useful, and actually that allowed students to have continuing access to the Aula stuff, even at, you know, in the darkest days when everything was inaccessible. So that was very useful. I would say lots of them have used the mobile app rather than use the laptop. And when I've had kind of conversations with students about using Aula, they're often referring to using the mobile app, and it's much friendlier. I mean, it's great, I think, as a mobile app, and if you're kind of somebody that, you know, depends on mobiles, it's really good. But obviously, I think they've changed something as well. Jennifer, can we check on that as well? Originally, students were only able to submit assignments on their laptop, but I think maybe now they're able to submit via their mobile. I don't know how you would submit an assignment via mobile, but I think they may be now able to use the mobile app to submit work as well. Should anyone want to do that? There's a couple of other questions here.
Somebody said, I'd be interested in hearing from Aula regarding the possibility of integrating Google documents, as he's got quite a lot of quizzes in Moodle that you'd like to transfer. What I'll do, Stephen, is I will speak to, I mean, you all have your dedicated learning advisors, and we've now been given a kind of enhanced offer by Aula, but I will pick this up in my project meeting with them in 20 minutes.
Great. I would say that just on the point about technical advice from the Aula team, it's really interesting that they always reply very quickly. And I had a bit of a discussion with one of them. Basically, they're all over the world working on different time zones. So you will get a response. So if you're a night owl, you will get a response from the Aula team at 3:30 in the morning, if that ticks your box. So they're there at all times and always responding very, very quickly. The flip side of that, I think that's probably not a bad thing, but the flip side, you'll get a kind of evaluation report, which is very simple. It just says great or disappointing, and then you just ask for a quick comment on the response. But they respond very, very quickly, and actually with all of my queries have been sorted out within, half an hour. It's quite extraordinary. The only one that's taking a bit of time isn't really Aula's fault. I've got a student who's struggling to access, but is also not responding to our requests to give information about her internet speed and stuff, her broadband speed and stuff like that. So that's not an Aula problem. I think that's a very local student problem. But generally, they've been able to solve everything very quickly. Is there anything else that would be useful for me to go back? Or shall I go back to that site again and kind of say a few more things about what I've got there? So I think we've probably covered Turnitin quite a lot, and I'd say that Turnitin is really good. Let me just close that so I don't do anything disastrous with that. Yeah, so you can see here from this submission window. So this is anonymized. You can see, so I've got student 1, student 2, student 3, etc., etc. And if I go back to all assignments, there's assignments. Now go back to materials again. So here's the materials for each week. I've mentioned to Andy that I was going to slightly change my approach this time. So actually flag up what the specific kind of core content of each week is. I think that would be really useful. And then each week, let's just look at week 7 as an example. So each week I actually gave them 3 live session activities to do, and then we had the live session. The way that Aula set it up with me this semester is simpler than that. It's just kind of one live session, one pre-live activity, or one block of pre-live activities followed by the live session. But this was quite useful. I quite like this. And what I started to use much more on Aula than I've ever done before on Moodle, and you may have different practice to this, but I started to dig around and find, I spent a lot of my preparing time finding useful videos. So I kind of minimized, where possible, the kind of text stuff, the kind of read this in advance of the session. I kind of emphasized watch this before the session, and then we'll talk about what you've seen in advance of the session in the live session. So I kind of changed my practice and moved away from written text much more into visual stuff, and there's some reading as well. What's this one here? There's another one there. So another thing to watch, which is a debate about stuff. And then when we came to the live session, I kind of, I suppose, assumed, because it was more easily accessible, I'm making a massive assumption there, aren't I? But the visual seems to be probably more open to more students than reading something. I assumed more of them would do it, so we could have a more useful, inclusive discussion in the live session. And finally, just there, the resources. What I've done, all I did was for the resources was I added each week, I added a link to the module reading list to try and encourage students to look at that. That's kind of all I put in resources as a rule.
Just one final question, Andrew. Do students access Aula through the same LSBU login details?
Yeah. They do. So that was the really interesting thing that happened whenever it was. So whenever we lost library access, which wasn't last, I think it was the Thursday before last. So it was around about, it was around about the 5th of, I can't remember now when it was now. Anyway, you know, week and a half ago, 10 days ago, about the 8th, when we lost library access, and at the same point, I lost access to Aula on my laptop, and I had a couple of queries from students, and I was kind of, no, it's still there, and I kind of looked and it wasn't there. But they were still, I was still able to access on my phone, as were students. So I think, and I can't explain why that should be, because we used, I mean, I don't, there's probably a technical reason for that. Somebody clever and can explain, but yeah, my access to Aula continued on mobile throughout, uninterrupted, but it's been a bit more interrupted using my laptop. But yes, it's the same password. It's the same username and password. So now I use my new LSBU password to access Aula.
Great, thank you. And Stephen's saying, do our module administrators attach students to the modules, just thinking ahead for next week? Now, because of our IT systems, the site incident, we're trying to sort that out.
Yeah,
so
I've got all of my students attached, and the way that Aula has done it is I simply send them a list of student names and LSBU email accounts, and I send that to the Aula team, and they upload the students to Aula. They do it. So it's not an LSBU admin job, it's an Aula admin. For me, it's been an Aula admin job.
Mm-hmm.
So what you need is a list of your students. Now the problem is that you need a list of students. Education Works is quite straightforward, because essentially there are 3 cohorts of students. There are 3 courses, and there's lots of overlap. So I can identify very easily which students are on which module. If you've got options and things like that, it's obviously going to be much more complicated. But yeah, it was from me to the Aula team, and the Aula team do it in about 5.5 minutes. And then you've got all of the students there. And if you go into, let me show you where where that information is found. So if you go into Aula, so here's my module again, assessment in education. I've got my drop down here, and underneath that I've got space settings. So if I go into space settings, I can see, well, they're all my participants are all here. It's very easy, and you can see I've also got in there, so I've got students, Chris Rowell is in there as a student, and I've got, I've got my administrator is there somewhere. I think that's, I can't quite see. Oh, there's me. So there are educators and there are students, and that information is all added very easily. I can add educators, but I can't add students. So you get the Aula team to add your students, and all they need is like an Excel spreadsheet with student name, module name, obviously, and student email.
And Alison said a student's going to get training and access to Aula before next Monday. Yeah, we are working on that at the moment, because obviously we've not had, QL's been down, hasn't it? So the DESIs are working on that. And do we have a standard video tutorial on Aula? I think they're all available in the kind of support section, aren't they?
Yeah.
And on Thursday, if you're all able to attend, we've got a session with Dave Phoenix, just giving an overview and kind of thank you for getting involved in Aula. Deborah Johnson's going to be speaking for 5-10 minutes, and then Aula's going to be doing a demo and Q&A. So for anybody who would like to come to that, please do sign up.
Yeah, I agree. I have to say that, I mean, I kind of went in as obviously as a novice at the beginning, and just by using it, a lot of it feels very intuitive. to be honest, and I kind of just learned by fiddling around with it. But the Aula technicians were always there. There are lots of really helpful, very short videos that if you ask them about things, they'll give you access to those, but they're available to us anyway, that kind of walk you through various bits and pieces with a kind of, that just models exactly what you've got to do. It's very straightforward. Michael, you asked about groups. I think the answer is no. So I'm going to be using groups because I've got quite a big cohort this semester, and I'm going to use groups, but I'm going to do all my group stuff via. Oh, hang on, no, I think you can do groups. Forget what I just said. I think there is a way of doing groups, but I'm not sure how to do it. So I've always used the groups through Teams, so through the live delivery. I think there is a way of doing groups, but I'm not sure how to do it. I haven't done it yet. Jennifer, can we check on that about grouping? Sorry, Michael, I don't know the answer.
Thanks, Andrew. Thank you.
So the question is, are we able to group students?
Yeah, I think the answer is yes, but I've never done it.
Yeah.
Except on Teams, obviously. So I've used breakout rooms and things on Teams, but not directly through Aula.
Mm-hmm.
But yes, I'm pretty sure that that's doable. Are there any other questions, Steve? Will there be a challenge in ensuring the correct students are added to the Aula modules given the lack of access to QL? I guess I don't know. I mean, I haven't got huge numbers, Steve. I mean, the module I'm doing this term is going to be about 80 students, and I've given Aula all of those student names. In a sense, there's a bit of a partnership with students because you kind of want students to check that they've got access to Aula and then let you know through some mechanism if they haven't. So it's a little bit about a bit of communication from students. So I've had a couple of students who are definitely on the system who have been unable to access Aula. So I've looked into that, and usually we've been able to solve that. Is there any email from Aula to send? Yes, there is. Jennifer, have you got one?
So once we have the names of the students on each of the Aula modules, a communication will be going out to say this module is an Aula module. This is how you access, the system, and that email is good to go as soon as we have the complete list of students on the modules. And Aula has been working with the DESIs on that, and I think that probably some of you will have received a communication on how those students were going to be identified.
Yeah, Jennifer, I'm slightly surprised, given how communicative Aula usually is. I'm slightly surprised that they haven't already contacted module leaders.
Yeah, I think they have. I mean, I don't know which school. Who's the person asking? Who is the person?
I'm from the School of Built Environment. I was just asking. Maybe I just clarify. I was thinking in terms of what Andrew mentioned about easily sending the Excel sheet of the students to be added to the Aula. I was thinking, like, if usually it happens, some students are missed out, late enrollment, and
so I know. Just looking at the update from Aula, they've got data from HSE, APS, ACI, and business. And BA haven't sent the data yet because they're hoping the systems will be up online. I think, were you going to start your teaching later? I don't know.
Yeah, so the plan is 8th of February.
Yeah.
Jennifer, the DESIs meet every 9 o'clock every Tuesday, and the lists come up from the course directors through the DESIs and registry to Aula.
Yeah.
So the module leaders shouldn't be sending them directly to Aula. The module leaders, as you say, should have had an email from either their course director or their DESI, and then we meet every Tuesday at 9 o'clock with Aula, and they go through the student lists they got and the ones they haven't got. So it goes sort of that way, if that's okay.
Yeah, no, that's helpful to know. Thank you.
Is that okay? Were there any other sort of outstanding questions or anything I've not really picked up?
No, I think that was really helpful. Thank you so much for taking the time, Andrew.
Oh, it's been a pleasure. Thank you. And I've thought about some new things to do now. And Andy's idea about that kind of idea about putting a title to each session, I think would be really helpful in terms of orientation. That's really useful. Thanks, Andy.
And everybody's obviously more than welcome to come to the sessions with 2 other module leaders who have been on the first pilot. And again, that session with Dave, Phoenix, Deborah Johnson and Aula on Thursday. So they should all be in your diaries, and, just come to as many as you like.
Great. Thanks, Jennifer. I'll stop the recording and I'll download the recording and send it to you.
Yeah, that'd be great. Thank you.
All right. Pleasure.
Thanks very much then. Bye.
Good week. Bye.
Bye.